how much of this tension is labor union tension?
There's not a day that goes by, Tom, that something in the supply chain doesn't affect us. Going back to new trade policy, COVID-19, consumer-based import surges, and now ongoing discussions with labor. In our case, the dock workers had been on the job an average of 6 days a week during the pandemic, moving records.
So they didn't
cargo.
mail it in. I need to interrupt here because the stereotype out there in America is these guys are mailing it in. They're up having beverages at the Sunset Tower Hotel where they should be working on a dock, and you're saying they worked.
Absolutely, they did. The exchange, every average ship that comes into Los Angeles unloads and loads the entire vessel space, and that productivity is the best in the business today.
Gene, you've lost a lot of volume. Can you walk us through how much volume you've lost, to whom, how much of it you think is lost forever, and what on earth you can do about it to try and get it back?
Yeah, it's not going to be just one person like myself doing it. It's got to be an industry movement. Over the last 3 months, John, we've lost about 25% of our cargo. We had an earlier than normal peak season. First 7 months, we're on pace with the record that we set just last year. We also saw durables come down, as predicted. You're not going to buy a refrigerator every year. You're not going to buy those big, bulky furniture items. So that dissipated just a bit. But really, it's been the hand-wringing about a potential labor disruption that moved cargo to the East and Gulf Coast, even though both sides put out 2 joint releases saying they wouldn't strike and they wouldn't lock out labor.
So you think it's lost forever?
No, I don't. I think there will be a portion of it, maybe right now 5% of our overall volume, that sticks through those other gateways. And that's why I've been crisscrossing the country over the last month and a half, trying to share the ground truth and let folks know that productivity is still there and we have latent capacity.
How do you convince them this isn't going to happen again?
That is the tough part. Been around this industry for a long time, Lisa, and every time it looks a little bit different in these negotiations, whether it be our dock workers, recent rail workers, or others. We've got to give folks confidence that we can return certainty to the marketplace. Typically, these dock worker contracts go every 6 years, but folks have long memories.
Well, and that's the reason why perhaps some of the business isn't going to come back and why some people are going to diversify more than they previously had. So what are some of those other regions doing in the Northeast, in the South, that is kind of challenging for you right now in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'll set the stage for you. Back in 2002, about 80% of the Trans-Pacific trade went through West Coast ports. Today, that's less than 60. Ports on the East and Gulf Coast have hired switched-on leadership. They've aligned with policymakers and elected officials, and they've put coalitions together to drive investment. Over the last decade, the federal government has out-invested West Coast ports 11-1. $11 billion.
Say that again. 11. Who's got the 11? Who's got the 1?
East and Gulf Coast ports 11, West Coast ports 1, Tom.
What did Speaker Pelosi do? Was she sleeping?
This is where it's got to change with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. We've been campaigning from Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti to Governor Gavin Newsom, the president and his administration. 40% of our nation's imports come through the Southern California gateways.
Folks, this is really important. 1 in 50 jobs in the nation has to do with when we're flying into LAX looking down on Gene Seroka's world, right?
That's right.
That's a legitimate number.
And 1 in 9 jobs in Southern California, about 1 million paychecks go to that port effort.
What's your biggest headache with the railroads? I mean, you were around when the Transcontinental Railroad came out of LA and went up through Utah. But when you wake up in the morning and you look at the next mile, if you will, you unload the boats and they're on freight, right? What do we need to do to get the freight game straightened out, particularly after the strike that John mentioned with Secretary Walsh?
Yeah. Tom, the permutations are so great. There are 200,000 companies that use this port to import and export every year. No one has a market share greater than 5%. By California law, we're a landlord. We're a real estate company. But we've created this outsized responsibility and our convening powers to bring everybody to the table.
Is the railroads the bottleneck, and is the railroads controlled by Western Railroad guy? He's got a railroad in his attic in Omaha. Was this Warren Buffett's fault that the railroads can't get together with the port?
I will tell you this.
I need to make some news here, but let's blame this on Warren Buffett, please.
Over the last 4 years, with all of these impacts and everyone looking at the consumer-based import surge, there have been about 8 to 10 micro trends throughout, including stuffing up of empty containers, surge of imports, and the bottlenecks the railroad saw. We've worked our way through that, but there'll be something else around the corner over the next hill.
How many more digs do you want to take at Buffett? You still going?
I
blaming- are you
interviewed
blaming
Warren
Warren?
Buffett once. We spent the whole time talking about his wonderful state-of-the-art train thing he's got up in the attic. You know, Lionel HO trains and all that.
You're still trying to reschedule that interview.
Yeah, I read Snowflake. Warren,
Gina,
give
want
me
to
a
finish
break.
here. Want to finish on the US economy. We're all trying to work out where we are right now. Never mind it's 6 to 9 months. I don't know where we are right now. What are you seeing?
What I see is the consumer continues to buy. The last 4 months of consumer spend numbers are more encouraging than many thought. Coming into the holidays, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, however we want to categorize these early days, encouraging. It's going to give us a chance in our industry as maybe one of those leading indicators to flush out some of the older inventory and get back on maybe a more normal cadence beginning at the first of the year. But so far, encouraged by the economy based on that consumer spend.
Can I ask a question? Aaron Judge, Angels or Dodgers? Which do you think?
Oh, I got to pull for the Dodgers.
You got to think the Dodgers.
How much is that going to cost?
Oh,
How big's that
after
contract going to be?
Verlander to the Mets yesterday, it's unimaginable.
So what was Verlander? 50 million a year?
For $40 million a year, something like that.
Where does that money come
That's
from?
almost like what he's making
Can you
from
explain to
Governor
me where
Newsom.
that money comes from when it's such a hyper-localized
Lisa, you're the
sport?
Mets fan. Please, you had a good day
Where does that come
yesterday.
from?
Stevie Cohen. But I mean,
That's the right
let's be
answer.
honest. It comes from the hedge fund backers.
It's baseball money
Yeah.
blows my mind.
I learned more about this, you know, and Gene is sort of removed from the labor debates and the train. I learned more from him in 10 minutes.
But
than
I
I've
think what we
in
learned
6
there from
months.
Gene was that we're not seeing the slowdown in the economy that I think many people anticipated.
Yeah.
Would that be right? And you're not looking for a recession next year either?
No, I'm not. And what I also see is that what we don't discuss enough is the fact that we talk retail finished goods that are going to the store shelves and fulfillment centers. About the same amount of cargo coming through our port are parts and components for U.S. manufacturers. I was just with the Illinois Manufacturers Association in Chicago on Friday. Those folks are upbeat.
Wow.
I got like 15 more questions.
Well, you've got about 30 seconds.
Just what's the thing the media gets most wrong on that glorious doc that is 1 in 50 of our jobs? What's the thing that drives you nuts that people like us talk about?
Now, it's the interdependency between all these nodes in the supply chain and participants that you have to look at. It's layered, it's nuanced.
Okay.
It's not just one throat to choke. It's not one lever you can pull.